Some cities are shaped by centuries of gradual change. Warsaw was shaped by moments that changed everything. Today, colorful historic townhouses give way to Soviet-era monuments. Glass skyscrapers rise above former industrial districts, and old factories have found a completely new purpose. At first glance, it can feel like several different cities stitched together. But that's exactly what makes it so fascinating. Over the last century, Warsaw has been destroyed, rebuilt, and reinvented, with each chapter leaving its mark on the city we see today. Before coming here, we weren't quite sure what to expect. We'd heard so much about the destruction of the Second World War that we didn't know what we were going to find. What we discovered was a city that acknowledges its past without being defined by it. A city that has embraced every chapter of its history while continuing to look confidently towards the future. Join us as we explore the many faces of Warsaw and uncover how one city came to tell so many different stories. We arrived in Warsaw with plenty of questions, but very few expectations. One of our first impressions was just how easy central Warsaw is to get around without a car. With its extensive public transport network, cycle paths and walkable streets, everything felt within easy reach. So we left the car behind and set off towards the old town on foot. On the way, we passed through the Saxon garden. Dating back to the early 18th century, the Saxon garden is not only one of Warsaw's most beautiful green spaces, but also Poland's oldest public park. Wide, tree-lined avenues, well-maintained grounds and elegant fountains make it feel remarkably peaceful, especially considering it's right in the heart of a bustling capital city. As we continued through the Saxon garden, we noticed more and more people gathering ahead of us. Curious to see what was happening, we followed the crowd until we found ourselves standing before the tomb of the unknown soldier, where a military parade was just about to begin. Set beneath the only surviving fragment of the once grand Saxon palace, the memorial serves as a powerful reminder of both the devastation that Warsaw endured during the war and Poland's military sacrifice. Even today, military ceremonies held here continue a tradition that remains deeply woven into Polish national identity. Leaving the tomb of the unknown soldier behind, we continued our walk towards the old town. Before long, we reached Krakowskie Przedmieście, one of Warsaw's most iconic streets. For centuries, this formed part of the historic royal route that was used by Polish kings and visiting dignitaries. Today, it's lined with government buildings, churches, hotels, and painstakingly reconstructed historic townhouses. The first landmark we came across was the Presidential Palace.
The Presidential Palace is the official residence of the President of Poland. Thankfully, this magnificent building survived World War II almost unscathed, unlike, sadly, the rest of the city.
Originally built in the 17th century, it has served many different roles, from an aristocratic residence to the seat of government. Today, it remains one of Poland's most important political buildings, hosting state ceremonies and welcoming visiting heads of state from around the world. Right next to the presidential palace is the Carmelite Church, which is open to visitors between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. From the outside, the church seemed fairly understated. Once inside, though, we quickly noticed how much more elaborate it was than we'd expected. Rich shades of gold, finely detailed stucco work, and intricately crafted altars gave the church a warmth and richness that wasn't immediately apparent from the street. Dating back to the 17th century, the church has long been associated with Poland's royal history and remains an important place of worship today. After leaving the church, we continued our stroll along the royal route. By now, it was becoming clear that we had completely misjudged Warsaw. The elegant streets, meticulously restored buildings, and lively atmosphere were nothing like we'd imagined. Just before reaching the Old Town, we arrived at St. Anne's Church, one of Warsaw's oldest and most recognizable churches. Its refined, neoclassical facade hides an interior that feels bright, spacious, and beautifully balanced. Tall white columns frame richly decorated side chapels, while gilded details and painted ceilings draw your eyes upwards. Originally built in the 15th century, the church has been rebuilt several times, leaving it with the fascinating combination of a neoclassical exterior and the Baroque interior we see today. Stepping back outside, we found ourselves standing where the elegant royal route gives way to Warsaw's colorful old town. Just a few steps further, we arrived on Castle Square. Dominating the square is Sigismund's Column, one of Warsaw's most recognizable monuments. Erected in 1644, it honors King Sigismund III Vasa, who moved the Polish capital from Krakow to Warsaw, forever changing the city's place in Polish history. Standing proudly behind it is the royal castle. For centuries, this was the residence of the Polish monarchs and the political heart of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Today, its distinctive red facade remains one of Warsaw's defining landmarks. On Castle Square, outdoor cafes were busy. People lingered in the sunshine, and visitors gathered beneath Sigismund's Column before wandering off into the maze of streets beyond. Leaving Castle Square behind, the streets became narrower. Colorful townhouses stood shoulder to shoulder, and almost every restaurant seemed to have tables spilling out onto the cobblestones. A few minutes later, we reached the Old Town Market Square. Surrounded by rows of colorful merchant houses, busy cafes and restaurants, it was easy to understand why this has been the heart of Warsaw for centuries. Every table seemed to be occupied. People were enjoying their dinners in the evening sunshine, and we couldn't help but wonder what other corners of the old town were waiting to be discovered. After spending some time around the market square, we continued exploring the maze of streets that make up Warsaw's old town. As we made our way towards the northern edge of the old town, the cafes, shops, and restaurants gradually gave way to brick fortifications, and shortly afterwards, we stood before the Warsaw Barbican, the fortified gateway that once protected one of the main entrances to the city. Although the Barbican itself dates from the 16th century, the defensive walls surrounding it trace Warsaw's medieval origins, when protecting the city from attack was essential to its survival. Walking along the restored city walls offered a completely different perspective on the old town. Looking out across the moat and back towards the red brick fortifications, it was easy to imagine this once being the edge of the city, long before Warsaw expanded into the lively capital it has become. By this point, we'd been on our feet for most of the day, so it was time to take a break and find something to eat. One thing we had noticed was that Warsaw has no shortage of excellent dining options. From traditional Polish cuisine to flavors from all over the world, choosing where to have dinner wasn't easy. Our choice was Sambal, an Indonesian restaurant on the edge of the old town. It wasn't exactly the meal we'd expected to have in Warsaw, but it turned out to be an excellent decision. The food was full of flavor, the service was friendly, and it was yet another reminder that Warsaw kept surprising us in the best possible way. By the time we finished dinner, it was already dark outside. We weren't quite ready to call it a day just yet, so we headed back into the old town for one final stroll. As beautiful as it had been during the day, we somehow found it even more captivating in the evening. Historic facades were softly illuminated, restaurants were still busy, and the warm lights gave the streets an almost magical feel. Soon after, we found ourselves back in the market square. Seeing it so full of life, it was difficult to imagine that almost everything around us had once been reduced to rubble. The destruction wasn't simply a consequence of fighting. After the Warsaw Uprising, retreating German troops systematically demolished much of the city in an attempt to erase the Polish capital altogether.
In 1944, the city of Warsaw was tragically, deliberately wiped out. 85% of buildings were destroyed. So everything you see around me here at the Central Market Square, all of these buildings were painstakingly rebuilt. The story of Warsaw is one of resilience, that of the Polish spirit, and that is honored on the UNESCO World Heritage List.
After spending a little longer wandering through the illuminated streets, we slowly made our way towards the Barbican once again. Passing beneath its centuries-old brick gateway one last time, accompanied by the music drifting through the narrow streets behind us, felt like a fitting way to end our first day in Warsaw. The following morning, we started the day with breakfast at Raven's Cafe. Housed in a sleek, modern office building, it proved to be the perfect place to start our second day in Warsaw, serving up excellent hot cacao and healthy breakfast with interesting flavors. After breakfast, we continued through central Warsaw. wide avenues, modern office buildings, and busy intersections painted a very different picture of the city from the one we'd explored the previous day. As we continued, one structure began to dominate the skyline ahead of us. The closer we got, the more it seemed to dwarf everything around it. Standing in the vast open space of Parade Square, we could finally appreciate just how immense this building really is.
The Palace of Culture and Science, off to my left, is one of Warsaw's most recognizable landmarks. It was gifted to the people of Poland by the Soviet Union back in the 1950s and has been controversial for that very reason as a potential symbol of oppression. Up until 2021, this was also Poland's tallest building until the completion of the Warsaw Tower, which is now also the tallest building in the entire European Union.
Seeing the palace up close was another reminder of just how many different layers of history coexist in Warsaw. Less than 24 hours earlier, we'd been walking past royal palaces and through medieval streets. Now, we were standing beneath one of the most enduring reminders of the communist era. During the Cold War, Parade Square served as the backdrop of military parades, state ceremonies, and mass political gatherings designed to project the strength of the regime. These days, tourists pause to admire the palace, and locals simply pass through as part of their daily routine. For decades, the palace defined Warsaw's skyline. Today, it stands alongside a new generation of skyscrapers, a reminder that the city has continued to evolve without forgetting the chapters that came before. After spending some time around Parade Square, we decided to slowly make our way towards the Vistula River. As we'd already learned in Warsaw, some of the most memorable discoveries come when you're not looking for them. One of those discoveries was the Warsaw University Library Garden. At first, we simply wandered through the landscape gardens surrounding the library. With shady paths, ponds, and plenty of greenery, it felt like a welcome escape from the bustle of the city, and we were in no hurry to move on. As we continued exploring, we noticed a walkway leading up the side of the building. Curious to see where it led, we climbed to the top and found ourselves surrounded by winding paths and lush greenery high above the streets of the city. One feature in particular caught our attention, a curious circular window hidden among the greenery. Through it, we could look directly into the library below, as if the garden had its own secret backstage view. Spread across more than a hectare, the University Library Garden is one of the largest rooftop gardens in Europe. Divided into several interconnected sections, it combines carefully landscaped planting with elevated viewpoints that look out across the city and towards the Vistula River. From up here, it was hard to believe we were only a short walk from some of Warsaw's busiest streets. After spending more time here than we had expected, we eventually made our way back down and continued towards the river. Before long, we finally arrived at the Vistula. For many years, the river played a much smaller role in city life than it does today. Now, it has become part of everyday life again, giving both locals and visitors somewhere to jog, cycle, meet friends, or simply relax by the water. Stretching for several kilometers along the western bank, the revitalized boulevards have transformed what was once an overlooked stretch of river into one of Warsaw's liveliest public spaces. Part of the riverfront's transformation is the recently completed Magdalena Abakanowicz pedestrian and cycling bridge. Elegant, modern, and seemingly floating above the Vistula, the bridge offered a wonderful vantage point from which to admire the river, the revitalized boulevards, and Warsaw's skyline, all coming together in a single view. After taking in the views from the bridge, we continued our walk through this vibrant riverside neighborhood. Just a few steps away, a distinctive complex of red brick buildings caught our attention. From the outside, it looked sleek and modern. It wasn't until we stepped inside and noticed the name Elektrownia Powiśle, Elektrownia meaning power plant, that we realized this place had a fascinating story to tell.
Warsaw is reinventing itself. Historical spaces are being repurposed and modernized, such as the city's old power plant, which you can see right behind me. Back in 2021, it won the global award of being the best mixed-use development anywhere in the world.
Walking through the complex, we were struck by how seamlessly the old and the new had been brought together. Original brickwork, steel structures, and industrial features now sit alongside cafes, restaurants, and boutique shops without feeling out of place. Rather than tearing it down or turning the power station into a museum, Warsaw has given it a new purpose, creating a place that feels just as relevant today as it did when it first supplied electricity to the city more than a century ago. With so many delicious-looking restaurants and food stalls under one roof, Elektrownia Powiśle also turned out to be the perfect place to have dinner. We eventually settled on Patatai, where we enjoyed a fantastic meal on the outdoor terrace, surrounded by lush greenery with the old power station as our backdrop. It was a great way to round off our second day in Warsaw. Before setting off for our next destination the following morning, there was one final place we wanted to visit, Fabryka Norblina, another former industrial site that has been given a new lease of life as a hub for cafes, restaurants, shops, and cultural spaces. Before exploring the complex, we settled into Java Coffee for breakfast. Surrounded by the beautifully restored industrial architecture, we enjoyed excellent coffee, freshly baked pastries, and a delicious slice of cake while the place was still waking up for the day. Wandering through the former factory grounds, we came across historic machinery and reminders of the site's industrial past at almost every turn. Rather than being tucked away behind glass, these pieces of history have become part of the experience, blending naturally with the cafes, shops, and public spaces that surround them. Before coming to Warsaw, we'd never have considered visiting a former factory or power station. Yet, within the space of just 12 hours, we'd explored 2 of them, and both had become unlikely highlights of our trip. Somehow, They captured everything that had surprised us about Warsaw. Our time in Warsaw had come to an end far too quickly. Looking back, what impressed us most wasn't one particular era of the city's history. It was the way Warsaw has embraced them all. Royal, communist, industrial, and modern. Each chapter has contributed to the city we see today. We arrived expecting a city shaped by what had been lost. We left having discovered one that's still writing its next chapter and looking firmly towards the future.